Tom Jordan, forced backwards. Good tackle there from Finn Smith.
Baxter, has he got there? He has! What a time for Finn Baxter! Italy have their line set, but that line cannot deal with Ollie Chessum.
When mum and dad split, obviously being the older brother, I think you naturally just care for your brothers a bit more. I saw, how hard it was for mum, so you appreciate sort of what she does for you. And I think there's a lot of kids that grow up like that now. You're listening to the England Rugby Podcast, O2 Inside Line. I'm Ollie Chessum. I'm Ollie Chessum. I play for Leicester Tigers and England Rugby. My main position is second row, so 4 or 5. And a lot of my position is centred around the line out. So you'll see myself and someone like Maro being lifted into the air for line outs, for example. And then I suppose the first question you get asked when you're a rugby player is, are you in the scrum? We're sort of slap bang in the middle of it. So we're one of the two people pushing behind the props. The obvious characteristic for a lock is height. Most of us are sort of 6'4" and above. A lot of the stuff for a second row's work is the stuff that doesn't really make the highlight reel, shall I say. So it's the effort kind of stuff. Physicality is the obvious one. And then, like I say, just the set piece has to be your bread and butter. So the line out stuff is something that a second row really takes hold of. A big idol of mine growing up was someone I was fortunate enough to play alongside with, and a bit of an England legend is Courtney Lawes. I've tried to steal snippets of his game, but I think, Courtney was just renowned for his physicality and relentlessness. And then, like I've alluded to before, like this set piece stuff, he was one of the best line-out jumpers that England have ever produced. So he's definitely someone that I've tried to not model my game around, but I've watched a lot of and tried to, learn from. Growing up, I was just a sporty kid, I think. I loved everything to do with sport. Football and cricket were probably the two sports that I grew up playing the most as a youngster, and then I sort of found rugby a little bit later on. We grew up in rural Lincolnshire, so I was out and about doing all sorts as a kid. I was one of 3. I got my 2 younger brothers, so Lewis is 22, about to turn 23 February, so about 2.5 years between myself and Lewis. And then there's Dylan, who's the youngest of the 3 boys, and there's 7 years between me and him. And then I have a younger half-sister there's about 20 years between myself and Zoe. So 3 boys, and mum and dad separated when we were 12, so mum was dealing with 3 boys who were all very, very much into their sport, and yeah, she did well really. Just 3 of us all had to be at other ends of the county doing whatever it was, and somehow she managed to get us all there every week, and I hope she's bearing the fruits of her labour now. Yeah, they'd say we're quite different. I'd say I'm probably the more calmer, quieter of the 2. Lewis was certainly a lot louder than I was growing up. A bit more out there, whereas I was a bit more, on the quieter side. We grew up in the middle of nowhere, really. I remember we just had walkie-talkies so mum could fetch us back for tea and what have you, just, outside, building dens, climbing trees, riding your bike around wherever. We were quite lucky in that respect. We're about 15 minutes from a town called Sleaford in Lincolnshire, in a tiny village. Can't have been more than sort of 50 houses in the village. And that's where my family still live now. Lincolnshire, and that area is a place that's very close to my heart. My secondary school was Carr's Grammar School in Sleaford. It was my local school. It's a grammar school. They still have the whole 11+ system in place in Lincolnshire. So you take a test when you're in year 6 to see if you could get in. And it's where all 3 of us went. Myself, Lewis and Dylan all attended the same school. It's a small school, probably about 800 kids. And it was a sporty school, don't get me wrong, but it was always a football school, really. I remember sort of rugby Wednesday lunch or Tuesday lunchtimes going around with the team sheet and trying to see if we could get 15 lads together to play on a Wednesday afternoon against another school. And we'd always get pitched up against, the big private schools in the National Cup, and it was more often than not an early exit for us. But I love my time there. I've got some of my closest friends that I met at school, and it's where rugby started for me, really. My PE teacher and a family friend, Ben Pickard, was the man that introduced me to rugby in year 7. He was, like I say, he's a family friend. His wife played netball with my mum many years ago, and he just sort of said, "You're too tall not to be giving rugby a go." My dad was a really good cricket player. Every Saturday I'd spend my afternoons down at Billingborough Cricket Club for hours just watching my dad play. He was a rugby player as well. He was a prison officer, so he played for the prison officers team. And unfortunately got injured, so I kind of stopped all of his sport really. And then I mentioned before, Mum was a netball player, so again, like going down watching Mum, it might be training in the weeks where I'd have to go down with her and watching her play her matches. I suppose all the family are fairly sporty. All my uncles have always played football. My granddad was almost a national champion. I think in his third national championships of tug of war back in the day. That tells you a bit about the size profile of the family. Yeah, a big bunch. But yeah, the family have always been into sport, and so I suppose it was a bit of an inevitability really that we were all going to play sport to some degree. I don't think we ever expected to be sat here. It's weird actually, my mum's 6'2", her siblings are all that and taller, and my grandma's 4'11" at most, so it's bizarre. But my granddad was certainly back in the day would have been very tall. I feel like people are slowly getting taller and taller these days, but no, my granddad, I think that's my mum's side is where I got a lot of my height from. My dad's still 6'4", so I was never going to be short. There's a very one side of the family is definitely a lot taller than the other. Yeah. I think it was just a lunchtime tryout, I think, for the Year 7 rugby team. I was like, I'll go down and give it a go. And I loved the training session, and then the team came out to play the first game that following week. And I remember saying to my mum, I was like, there's no way I can play. I've never played rugby before. And I suppose when you're not comfortable with something, then it's a bit like your comfort zone. The easy thing is to probably shy away, and that was what I did really. So I remember ringing up and saying, look, because I said the PE teacher was a family friend, she's like, look, Ben, Oliver's not keen enough to play in a game just yet. So I didn't play. And eventually he got me to play a game. I think my first game was against a school called Ratcliffe College. So they're towards Leicester way, actually, private school. And obviously we're just the small local school. I got on pretty well. I think I scored a couple of tries in my first game, and then that was it. I was slowly had to transition, and it got to a point where I had football and rugby on at the same time on a weekend. So Saturday football, Sunday rugby. And I think Mum was like, look, you're going to have to make a choice here. So I think I'd have been about 14. I said, I'll pack football in and sort of carry on just playing rugby. But even at that point, it was never to any standard. Yeah, so as a young footballer, I was a centre half, which I don't think will come as much of a surprise to anyone. But I was a Liverpool fan growing up. So Steven Gerrard was always my idol. Not that I'd liken myself to his playing style. I'm nowhere near that sort of level, but yeah, I was a proper Steven Gerrard Liverpool fan growing up. I actually think one of the things I considered was I was struggling to get football boots in a size 14, 15. It was like looking at the Adidas Coppers or the Canterburys, and I chose the Canterburys for some weird reason. But yeah, I'd been playing football all my life, and I think the novelty of football had worn off, whereas at that point, rugby was new to me, it was exciting, and it was something that I wanted to explore a bit more.
My name's Ben Pickard. I'm a PE teacher at Carr's Grammar School in Sleaford, Lincolnshire, and I taught Ollie and his brothers all the way through their school career. All I did really for Ollie is facilitate the opportunity for him to have a go at rugby. And he just took it to a duck to water. He had the skills and the agility and all of those kind of attributions of someone that was much smaller. I remember a game once, a little bit later on, where the ball was kicked off. He ran on to take the ball right from kickoff, and it dropped short on him, and he picked it off his shoelaces like he was a slick catcher on the run, and just barreled forwards. And you think, oh, this kid is an athlete. I think Ollie's route being different stood him in good stead because nothing was kind of a given. Not going through that typical route again has done nothing other than make him work harder and understand the concept of hard work, that things aren't just given, they have to be earned. I can remember February the 13th, 2022, when he came on and played at his debut. It was like nothing had changed, but he'd got a white shirt on and he's singing the national anthem. It was just a disbelief. Totally earned his place and should be there, but it was just like, that's Ollie. The pride and just the disbelief in a good sense, the disbelief that he was there and he was doing it. And he came on, stole his first line out, went on, and just has never looked back.
My journey with like representative, like that next step of rugby's kind of got like two halves. So when I first started playing, I took to it quite naturally, and fairly early on my school put me in for the Tigers sort of pathway. That kind of took away from, the whole reason I was playing rugby was just to enjoy it. It then turned into like Tuesday, Thursday night trials, training, everyone's down there, their dads are their own little personal coaches. It's like you know what I mean? It's a bit of it just got too competitive for me. And there was an age sort of in my teens where I sort of struggled a bit with all sorts of stuff really. And I just preferred being at home. I stopped playing rugby completely from like the age of 14 to about 16. It was a weird period for me, teenagers have all sorts of weird issues growing up, and it was a really weird time. I didn't want to leave the house and sort of stuff like that. I was struggling at school. But I suppose having that year off, the whole novelty of rugby started again for me when I went back to it. I just wanted to do more of it. We had 2 training sessions a week. I'd be down there every week, and I suppose I was getting to an age where you sort of drive yourself there, so it made it easier. But that year off, I didn't really fill it with anything really. But then I suppose that's probably why I enjoyed it so much when I went back. I had a conversation with Nottingham Rugby. I'd have been 18, just leaving school, around going for a pre-season trial, and I had no idea really about what Nottingham Rugby was about. The Championship wasn't heavily advertised. I'd been a season ticket holder at Leicester, always watched Leicester Tigers, always watched the Premiership. I didn't even know if Nottingham was full-time, and I remember sitting down with Neil Fowkes, who's now actually my scrum coach at Leicester, and him sort of offering me a 6-week, come along, Monday to Friday, train like a normal player, and we'll see where we go. My mum was, I think, a bit apprehensive, but she was, at the same time, she was so keen to just let me go and explore it. I think that was when I realised that I've got a shot at this. I wouldn't change my journey for anything. Like, I've loved every bit of it. Not to say that I would want to relive it all over again, because it was long, and there was so many different turns and sort of ways it could have gone. I was speaking to Joe Hayes as well. He had a similar journey. Although he went for the academy stuff, it's like we both went to state schools. And it's hard for me to say there's a disadvantage to it, because I'm sat here and I'm like, how? But I suppose the normal, the stereotypical pathway, the academy route, probably just produce more players if you look at it. But every bit of my journey I loved, and to anyone that's at a state school, the opportunity is still there to make it as a professional athlete. The academy system, in my opinion, is not a be all and end all. You don't have to be involved or affiliated to a Premiership club at 18 to feel like you got to make it. I was 19, 20 when I left Nottingham. That was the first time I got a sniff of any Premiership level rugby affiliated, one of the big sort of 10, 12 clubs in the country. It's something I'm proud of, when someone says to you, where did you go to school, what academy you involved in, to say that I just went to my local state school and I wasn't really a product of any Premiership academy. It's something I'm quite proud of. It's my journey, and it's unique to me. I've not met many people that have done something similar. Not to say it's like this, huge feat, but it's just not the usual way to go about it. Most guys that are have got the talent to be a professional rugby player are picked up by one academy or another at some point in their sort of school career. It just so happened that I wasn't. I remember as a 14, 15-year-old sat in the stands at Leicester, obviously never believing that professional rugby would be an option, a career. Seeing the S&C guys sort of warm players up, and do the activation stuff, and I was like, that'd be a pretty cool job. So from about 14, 15, I'd always had it in my head, right, I'm gonna do my A-levels, try and go to uni and do some sort of sports science, sport coaching, try and stay involved in sport in some capacity, because, sport's been my whole life. And then I don't know what it was, sort of first year of sixth form, I ran out of energy for education, I think. I was just like, I don't know if I could do 3 years at university. I wasn't really enjoying school all too much. So then for me, the other option was like I could go and work for the family business. Bailey Trailers back in Lincolnshire. They're third generation now, so my granddad started it. My mum and her 5 siblings all work there. And now my cousins are there, and they have been for sort of the last 5-10 years really. So there's always that option. probably wouldn't have been my preferred option, but it was something I was familiar with. I'd worked there in my summer holidays. It'd have been an easy stopgap, until I could really sort of figure out what I wanted to do. I remember probably being, as early as sort of 10, going in on school holidays. Dad would be working somewhere, Mum can get childcare because all of the aunties and uncles are all at work, so at the same place. So just go along and do little office jobs, and then slowly that turned into, as we were a bit older, sort of nipping out into the factory and helping our uncles do certain bits and bobs. I wasn't getting paid for my trial at Nottingham. I was getting paid match fees really for my first year there when they signed me. And I didn't play a game until December, signed a contract in June, so didn't earn any money. So I would train Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday with Nottingham, and on my day off on a Wednesday I'd be at the factory working on the pillar drill. So that was, the first time I realised that this is where I could be working if rugby doesn't work out. And then COVID hit in February, March of that year. Fortunately for me, Leicester had just approached before that to offer me a contract. But obviously there's that 6-month window where I hadn't been earning any money really playing at Nottingham, like £100 a week at most if I got to start. And, like everyone, COVID, there was, rugby stopped. So I was fortunate enough that the factory was, because of it being in the agricultural industry, was, something that needed to keep running. So I went there and learned to weld and was welding for the best part of 6 months. But yeah, I've got fond memories of being a youngster really. Like, it was the place that we were, the school taxi would drop us off after primary school at the factory, and we'd sit in the office, raid the vending machine cupboard for chocolate bars and what have you. Right the way up until I was like 18, 19 and actually, working and doing bits on the shop floor. Basically, I tried to get the good jobs and avoid the bad jobs at the factory. So the bad jobs being, my uncle giving you a sweeping brush and just telling you to sweep the shop floor. So I'd try and stick with my cousin Ben, who was working on repairs and stuff at the time. And, he'd just give me a go here and there and, try out a little bit on something that wasn't necessarily visible. So if I made a dog's dinner of it, then no one could see it. And then eventually sort of just got set on my own bench welding drawbars. I enjoyed it for a few months. I can't say that I'd have necessarily wanted to do it for my whole career. I wouldn't say I'm overly practical. Like, my whole family are like engineers. They're real smart, sort of gifted in that area really. Like my cousin who was teaching me is properly practical. My brother Lewis is probably more towards that side, whereas I wouldn't say I'm necessarily as gifted in that area as they are. It's cool, like I say, to have a generational family business, and hopefully it keeps going. It might not necessarily be something that I'm involved in, but I still get the same sense of pride when you're driving down the road and a green trailer passes by. It's something that my family have built. I'm extremely close with my brothers. The middle brother Lewis, we live together. Obviously we're both at Tigers, and then the youngest brother Dylan is 17, so he's in the academy pathway. We've always been close as brothers. We always fought and what have you. I think every brothers always do as they're growing up, especially me and Lewis. We were a lot closer in age gap, so there's a lot more to fall out about. I think I was a lot more protective over Dylan, with him being sort of 7-8 years younger than I am. And then when Mum and Dad split, obviously being the older brother, I feel like you have a bit of not that you feel like have to be the dad of the house, but I think you naturally just care for your brothers a bit more. I saw, how hard it was for Mum, so you appreciate sort of what she does for you. And I think there's a lot of kids that grow up like that now. I'm incredibly proud of them. It's weird, I think rugby for those two, even less so than me, was something that was on the radar for them. Like, Dylan didn't start playing rugby till he was 15. Lewis didn't really take rugby up until, similar to me, till secondary school. He didn't take to sport as naturally as maybe me and Dylan did. So he's really had to work so hard to get where he is, and that's why I'm incredibly proud of him. And I don't think Dylan's missed any of my professional games. He's on the sideline constantly with my mum. Obviously Lewis, being a professional player, it's hard for him to be there at the games all the time, but Dylan's there every weekend watching me. Him and my mum are by far my biggest supporters and my longest serving supporters, if you like. They're there every weekend, come rain or shine. I can guarantee that they're in the stands watching me, and it'd mean a lot to me if in a year's or in 2 or 3 years' time I can, return the favour and be sat in the stands watching him play professional rugby.
My name is Michelle Chessum and I'm Ollie's mum. I'd describe a younger Oliver as very active, very sporty from an early age, not rugby necessarily, but football, cricket. I would say he was quite a timid boy, really, liked to be at home because there's quite a big age gap between Oliver and his youngest brother. He's probably been very much a fatherly figure in Dylan's life. I think Oliver's a really good role model for his two younger brothers, definitely in rugby. You know, they would aspire to reach the levels Oliver's reached. He was just playing club rugby right the way through to doing A-levels. It was almost like once the ball got rolling, it really did accelerate. It all just seems like just something keeps happening for Oliver. So, you know, England and the Lions and now his captaincy recently, rightly deserved, but it does seem to have happened very quickly. I like to go to the games. I like Oliver to have somebody there that's there just for him. I think that, you know, Oliver's family are the people he most wants to be there. So for me, it's important that I'm there. I am proud of Oliver for being Oliver, not necessarily because of his rugby career, but just the nice, genuine guy that he's grown up to be. He's thoughtful, he's attentive, he's hardworking. He presents himself really well. So I think I'm more proud of his attributes and his career, perhaps, from a mum.
I joined Nottingham in, I want to say, this summer of 2019. So I'd have been 18 years old, just left school. And at that time, Nottingham was full-time professional outfit, as were most of the Championship clubs at the time. I didn't know that going into it. So I didn't go to the gym. So I remember like first day going into the gym, which is an old gun shed, I think, at Nottingham at Lady Bay. It's this tiny shed, not really fit to be a gym, learning how to bench, being told how to bench press and squat. You know, all these lads were in there and I was this stick-thin 18-year-old. You know, couldn't bench press my own body weight. I was, you know, properly new into it all. I'd never been into a professional changing room. I remember walking in and sitting in a guy called Seko CEO's seat, who Seko used to play at Leicester, still plays at Nottingham now. The biggest guy in the changing room, I'm 18. He's walked through the door and he was like, out you get. I was like, yeah, sorry. I was so fortunate in the sense that if I was a 18, 19-year-old lad in a professional team, like a Premiership team, you know, the chances are you're going out on loan to Nat 3, Nat 2 to get some experience, especially in the forward pack, because you've got to learn the tricks of your trade, really. Whereas I was sort of thrown straight into a Championship team. I got sent out on loan for a game at Loughborough Uni, and then I played quite well, and Fauxy sort of called me back the following week. And I played the Championship Cup games in December. That was my first game for them away at Cornish Pirates. Horrible place to play. And then that was it, really. I was playing Championship rugby. You know, that's just what I mean when I say, you know, the academy system isn't always the best route, or it's not the only route. There are other ways around it, and I definitely benefited more, I think, from being at Nottingham than being at a Premiership club. And they were so good to me. The lads, the coaches, I think the group chat still goes on WhatsApp, actually, with all the lads in. I see a few of them about here and there. You know, more recently when I've, you know, played for the Lions and what have you, they've all sent a text to say congratulations. So yeah, Nottingham holds a very special place in my heart and in my career. And like I say, it's sort of come full circle now with Neil Fowkes now being the scrum coach at Leicester. We work together again. You know, he was the guy that gave me my first shot in professional rugby. So I owe him a lot for that. I know that Dusty Hare and Dosser Smith, two Leicester club legends, would regularly go down to watch Nottingham games to sort of see. I think, you know, Leicester would send a lot of their young lads on loan there, so they'd go down and watch those lads play, see how they were getting on. And I think those two, along with a guy called Jed Glynn, went down to watch a few of the Nottingham games that I was playing in, saw a bit of potential in me. So I remember getting a phone call, actually, at the factory. I was working that day on my day off from Nottingham, and I was in the fitting shed and my phone rang. I shouldn't have had my phone in my pocket, actually, but my phone rang and I looked at it. It was Fauxy, so I walked back to the office, answered it, and Fauxy saying, Leicester have asked you to go and play in an A-League game against Gloucester. Would you want to go do it? We're keen for you to go. So I was like, yeah, 100%. So the following week, I think it was a Tuesday night, travelled over to Leicester, went on the bus to Gloucester, played for Tigers against Gloucester. And I thought that was the end of that, really. And we're sort of approaching January, February time around re-signing for Nottingham. And again, I'm in the factory and my phone rings again and it's Fauxy. And Fauxy basically said, Ches, I know we were looking to re-sign you, but Leicester have come in and they want you to go there. I suppose that was a big thing for Fauxy as well, as I was just sort of getting going at Nottingham, but it'd have been easy for him to say, no, like, stay here, we can, nurture you a bit here at Nottingham and then, go there. But he was like, no, go, we want you to go and sign for Leicester. And I remember signing my contract at a pub with my mum a few weeks later. I suppose I can't remember the exact, my first time meeting Steve Borthwick. We were training in COVID, so it was, you weren't really allowed to train. We were going in for running sessions, gym. As you arrive and one group was leaving, so I never really got to meet any of the lads for my first sort of few weeks. So I was quite nervous. But I met Steve and trained under him for a few years at Leicester, and he really took my game to another level, really. Steve's one of the best, if not the best coach I've ever worked with. I owe him a lot in terms of, my development. I remember that. Then him obviously leaving Leicester and coming here, and we went to an alignment camp up in Liverpool, and seeing Steve in England kit for the first time for me was weird. Obviously for Genji and the other lads, they'd had him here as a forwards coach for a while, but it seemed strange seeing Steve stood there in England kit when, I've only ever known him as my Tigers head coach. But it's weird how it's worked out, but that means I've been working with Steve for, the whole of my professional career, really, bar that year at Nottingham. So ever since I was sort of 20 to now I'm 25, I've had 5 years of working with Steve and getting to know him, and it's been really cool.
By Sami, and in comes Chessum.
I'm Will Stuart. I play for Bath and for England. Ollie Chessum on the pitch, he's intense. He gets, he's called Big Red for a reason. He's pretty direct. Off the pitch, he's not like it at all. He's a lovable bloke.
I like to think I've got a lot of close friends in the squad. Obvious ones being guys like Freddie Stewart, Jack Van Portfleet, Joe Hayes, George Martin, the guys from Leicester that I've gone through, the last 5 years with. And then, Ellis Genji's been my captain at Tigers and is now here. He's one of my closest mates in camp. I feel like I'm doing a lot of people disservice, really. I feel like I'm close mates with a lot of the guys here. Ironically, the Northampton Saints lads are lads that I'm quite close with, which I think the older heads at Tigers would disapprove of. I think it's so important to have close friends in here. One, because I think, in most environments, I think in all sporting environments, relationships you have off the field, that translates to how you play on the field, for sure. There's no doubt about it. But then I think the second reason is the amount of time we spend here in camp together. Ben Youngs and Dan Cole once tried to figure it out. I think they reckon they've spent 4 years of their life at Penny Hill Park over the course of 120 caps, whatever it is that Lenny's had, which means you spend an awful lot of time away from friends and family back home. This place is amazing, but it's its own bubble for 4 or 8 weeks at a time, depending on what campaign you're playing on. And you need people there to take your mind away from rugby. This group's, amazing at that. When we're on, but when we're off here, I love every minute. Just, you're just sitting in a room chatting with lads, and it doesn't have to be anything personal, really. Taking the edge off of what's, probably been a fairly intense day or week. And we're incredibly fortunate that we've got a squad full of really good lads. And like I say, I'm very lucky to be doing it with some of my best mates from Leicester. They're my best mates in life, really, now. I've gone through an awful lot together, watched each other sort of make our debuts along the way. And slowly but surely the other ones sort of come through, and it's been a real cool process, especially for myself, Fred, Jack, George, Hazy, like those guys. When I first met them, we weren't even first team players at Leicester. And now, we're regular first team players, all got international caps, and I think that's really special. My first nickname that Eddie Jones tried to give me in camp was Farlap, which I think is just this big red horse. Used to run races or whatever, I have no idea. I think most of the boys at Leicester have called me Big Red at some point, but yeah, a lot of lads call me Big Red in here. Speaks for itself. Big, I've got red hair. But then I acquired a new nickname over the summer on the Lions tour, bin chicken, which would be less obvious to people. There's this bird that it's like seeing a pigeon in London, really. It's this big bird though that wanders around parks in Australia with a massive beak. I too have a massive beak apparently, and so these birds were called bin chickens, and I quickly acquired the nickname bin chicken on tour, so much so that I've got it tattooed on my left foot. Actually, I've got a picture of a chicken in a bin in my on my left ankle as sort of a reminder of the tour. I'd prefer not to be called bin chicken, even though I've got it on my foot. It's more the lads that are on the Lions tour, it's like Genji, Dicky always calls me bin chicken. I suppose, yeah, it is a bit of a reminder of, you know, what was quite possibly the best 6 weeks of my life. So it's got that connotation with it, so I'm not too bothered. Had I just been called bin chicken because someone saw a bird with a massive beak and I wasn't on tour with the Lions, then it might sting a little bit more, but this one's got a bit of meaning to it, so I don't mind it.